Welcome back. You're watching MyAirMyles, and today behind me we have sunny Southport. Yeah, okay, it's cloudy Southport, but give me a break. In this video we're looking at the third flight we did with our DJI Mavic Air, and once again we took some steps to try and improve the video quality. We did that by using the histogram, ND filters, and the 180-degree shutter speed rule. As always, footage in these first few videos is raw, straight out of the drone, just using the settings that we're talking about in these videos. So what you see is what you get. There's no editing, no color correction, and nothing special done to the video after the fact to make it look better for you in post. Watch all the way to the end of the video because I'm going to make a special announcement. Remember, if you like the video, give it a thumbs up, share and subscribe, and let's get started. Okay, so the focus of this video is going to be on how we can control and use the settings to set the exposure on the camera so that we get, not too many highlights or shadows in the video. We want to get that good sort of mid-tone of colors that we could use if we wanted to do post-production. And just to get that nice video, we don't want to lose any data or information by having clipping happen, by not having the exposure set right on the camera. I'm going to start out now by saying I'm not a camera expert, and all I'm talking about in this video is things that I've used, that I've learned by reading blogs online, watching other YouTube videos, and sort of trial and error myself. The advice given here is in no way expert advice, but it's what works for me. So let's start off with some basics. The exposure triangle consists of three things. That is aperture, ISO, and shutter speed. Those are really the three settings that you can control to try and change the exposure of your footage. With the DJI Mavic Air, now that gets limited. The DJI Mavic Air has a fixed aperture. That means you cannot change the space that the light has to get through the lens and onto the sensor. So it has a fixed aperture of f2.8 and it cannot be changed. So that's one point in the triangle already gone. Now in terms of ISO, I like to film with ISO of 100 or as close to 100 as possible because this gives you the best picture, but it also gives you quite a dark picture. So ISO 100 is what we're using in this video. You may have to increase it a little bit for your videos, but keep it as low as possible because you don't want to introduce distortion or anything by increasing the sensitivity of the camera and throwing the ISO up too high. So you want to keep the ISO down to about 100. So the 180-degree shutter speed rule says that whatever your frame rate is, your shutter speed should be double that. So when we've been filming, in the last video and this one, we filmed at 4K at 30 frames per second. That means that we should have our shutter speed set to 1/60th of a second to get that more realistic motion image coming out of the camera. The idea here is that this mimics as close as possible to how your eye would notice motion and process it. So when we, in future, because I want to go back to filming in 60 frames per second, I don't particularly like 30 frames per second, so I'm going to knock the drone down to 2.7K for future videos at 60 frames per second. As a result of that, we will have our shutter speed set to 1/120th of a second, because 120 is double 60. Hope that makes sense. So that's the 180-degree shutter speed rule. So at this point, you'd be forgiven for thinking, well, the Mavic Air has a fixed aperture, you want to set your ISO to 100 to get the best picture, and there's a rule for what your shutter speed can be. So how much control do I really have over exposure if I have to follow these rules? Do I just set them and then everything's perfect? I can just fly and film and not have any problems? Well, unfortunately, no. And this is where the histogram takes its place. So in the DJI Go 4 app, if you select the camera settings and then you select the little cog on the top right, you can then enable the histogram graph. The histogram graph gives you a visual representation of the pixels that are coming in from the drone, and if they're skewed to being extremely bright or really dark. That way you can see if your video is overexposed or underexposed. So I'm showing some examples here of histograms, and in an ideal situation, you don't want to have the peak either at the top far right, because that means that your footage is overexposed and it's focused more on highlights. Or if the peaks are on the far left, that means your video is going to be very underexposed and you're going to have a lot of shadows. Both of these can mean clipping of data. And if you clip your data, you can't post-process it later to get your colors back. So an ideal histogram, which is almost impossible to get, but an ideal histogram has all the peaks in the middle, tapering off to both the left and the right in equal parts. Now, I say this is very hard to get to, but that is your ideal histogram. If you have a histogram that looks like this, then, you're doing really well, but it's not likely and I haven't found that. So if I've got my aperture fixed and my shutter speed is fixed at 1/60th of a second, and my ISO is fixed at 100, then if my histogram tells me that I'm overexposed, what can I do? How can I fix that? Well, that's where we introduce ND filters. So an ND filter acts like putting on a pair of sunglasses. It limits the amount of light that gets through and onto the lens, and then obviously onto the sensor in your camera. This can be on a normal camera or on a drone. For the DJI Mavic Air, there are a number of companies out there that are all selling ND filters. And usually you can buy them in sets that come with the ND4, ND8 or ND16 filters. It's rare, but you can sometimes get the ND32 in that set as well. I didn't. When I bought my set, I got the 4, 8 and 16 filters for both ND and ND polarizing. Now, ND polarizing is not in the scope of this video because we didn't use it for this flight, so I will cover that in a future video. My recommendation is you go out to take a video with your drone and you check the histogram and you see that you're on the higher end of the graph, meaning that your video is overexposed. I usually work up. I've done 4, 8, 16, but normally I end up using the 16 filter. So my recommendation to you would be start with the ND16 filter and then see if the histogram sort of balances out into the middle. If it does, then great. If not, then step down to 8 and step down to 4. If you start seeing that the ND16 has actually pushed you from being overexposed to the highlight side of the graph into the underexposed shadow side of the graph. So now, obviously you want to get the right filter as quickly as possible because all the time that you're checking if it's the right filter in the histogram, you're using precious battery time. As I say, my recommendation would be put the ND16 on if you're having overexposure problems and then work backwards, because that's what I have found from some experimenting is the most likely candidate to give you the video you want anyway, so don't waste your battery time by using anything else. So the next question is obviously, how do I apply an ND filter to my Mavic Air? Well, the Mavic Air actually has a blank filter on the front of it when it comes out of the factory. You have to unscrew this. Now, turn off your drone before you try to interact with the camera, because obviously that's a stabilized gimbal. If you try to turn the camera gimbal so that you can unscrew the lens filter on the front, the camera gimbal will try and fight you and you could overload the motor and seriously damage your drone. So don't do that. Turn off your drone before you start trying to take off the filter. Next tip is, if you have one or you have access to it or your girlfriend dyes her hair, get a latex glove. A latex glove will help you get better grip to take off the factory default lens cover on the DJI Mavic Air, because they do screw that on very tight. It also, having a latex glove when you're making this change prevents fingerprints and sweat and other things getting onto your ND filter and spoiling your video footage. Again, you don't want to notice this once you've made the change and then you're using a battery again. So, the first step, obviously turn off the drone. Second step, put on the latex gloves. Third step, remove the blank filter from the drone. Fourth step, take your chosen filter and screw it on to the thread at the front of the camera on the drone until it sort of feels a little bit resistance. And then stop. Don't over tighten it, because you're going to take it off quite quickly afterwards anyway, most likely, and you don't want to rip the thread on your new shiny drone. So don't over tighten it. Then turn on the drone, make the connection back with the remote controller and the phone, and check the histogram. If the histogram looks good, then great, you're probably good to fly. Do make sure that you check the white balance, the style, and the color settings on your drone to make sure that they're set how you want them for the shot you want to get. But other than that, that's how you control exposure from your DJI Mavic Air. You want to use the 180-degree rule. As I said, we're filming in 4K, so that's 1/60th of a second. You want ISO set as low as possible. We're using 100. And you want your aperture to be set to something reasonable. Now, aperture, as I said, with the DJI Mavic Air is fixed. So the way that we're controlling light getting into the lens is through ND filters. And congratulations, you've made it to the special announcement. Okay guys, this is a special announcement. I just got the confirmation yesterday that I'm actually going to be able to do this, so I'm going to announce it in this video. I am going to Romania in the next few days to see the home country of my girlfriend. So as part of that, we're taking the drone with us, and I've been reaching out to the Civil Aviation Authority over there to get permission to fly my drone over some pretty special locations. So to add to this, what we want to try and do is do a live stream for you when we're over there. This will be either on the 21st or the 22nd of October. I can't promise what time of day. I will try to announce it or put a scheduled live stream on YouTube so that you can set up notifications to get notified when we go live. But as I say, because of the regulations from the CAA, the weather could turn bad, or we might just not have signal in locations that we want to fly. We may not be able to do the live stream, but I am really hoping that we can do a live stream for you when we're out there in Romania in the next couple of days. So that literally means tomorrow or Tuesday we'll be doing the live stream, if we're doing one at all. So please do check back regularly on the channel. If you see the live streams being scheduled, make sure you click into it and click to get notified when we go live, and I hope you can join us for a few flights in Romania. So I want to know, did these tips help you make your videos better with your DJI Mavic Air or any other drone that you may fly? Do you use ND filters, and if so, what brand do you like to buy, why did you buy them, and why do you think they're better than another brand? And finally, is there anywhere in England that you think would be good for us to fly that we haven't been to yet? Because we're always trying to expand this channel, and we always want to try and find somewhere new, because if we don't, we're going to end up flying in the same places all the time. Let us know your feedback in the comments down below, because as always, your feedback drives the content of this channel. Thanks for watching, and have a great day.